In one of my Jewish studies classes, I once asked a question. How is the Talmud authoritative when it often contradicts itself and most times doesn't even give an answer to the question being asked? Coming from a Western evangelical background where truth is expected to be clear, singular, and airtight, the Talmud felt almost pointless and at best chaotic. But what I found challenged many of my assumptions, not just about Judaism, but about how we in the West think about authority, scripture, and even the writings of the church fathers. Hey, I'm Seminary Kofi, and today I want to explore why our modern logic doesn't always work, and how embracing sacred tension might actually make us better readers, thinkers, and disciples. Western thinking, especially in theology, is deeply shaped by Greek rationalism, also known as Platonic thought, Platonism, or Greek philosophy for you Bible thumpers. See, Plato believed the material world was a shadow of eternal, perfect forms. Truth was singular. Everything else was deviation or error. This dualism, this good versus evil, spirit versus flesh, true versus false, influenced early Christianity's categories of orthodoxy and heresy. Aristotle, Plato's student, gave us what's called deductive logic, the law of identity, A equals A, the law of non-contradiction, A can't be A and not A at the same time in the same way, and also the law of the excluded middle. A is either true or false, no in between. This became the backbone of Western thought and was baptized by thinkers like Thomas Aquinas, who used Aristotelian categories to build Christian doctrine. As a result, Western Christianity came to prize clarity over ambiguity, resolution over tension, and logical systems over layered tradition. This intellectual lineage didn't just stay in theology, it shaped our whole worldview. Western culture prioritizes resolution. We prefer binaries, right or wrong, true or false, saved or unsaved. Contradiction is seen as a flaw to be corrected, not a mystery to sit with. American Protestantism reinforces certainty. The Reformation gave us sola scriptura, but it also gave us the expectation that the truth should be self-evident and final. This creates a culture where pluralism feels dangerous because it seems to undermine confidence of what is true. In this framework, unresolved theological tension looks like theological weakness, not strength. And our American education actually trains for this type of thinking. See, from a young age, we're rewarded for picking the right answers on tests, not exploring complexity. But the Talmud often ends discussion with teku, meaning let it stand or let this remain unresolved. A response that in American classrooms would feel incomplete or even like a failure. Pragmatism undermines open-ended wisdom. See, American pragmatism of what works or what's the application has little patience for theological wrestling that doesn't produce immediate clarity or utility. But in Judaism, especially the Talmud, study is sacred for its own sake. The goal is formation, not just information. And that mindset is often hard to adapt in Western utilitarian culture. The Enlightenment then supercharged this thinking. Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am." Certainty, not mystery, became the ideal. John Locke then added, "True religion must be reasonable." Now this led to faith being treated like science, apologetics trying to prove doctrines like a math equation, and doctrinal systems that rejected mystery in favor of logical clarity. Even debates like biblical inerrancy reflected Enlightenment categories more than ancient Jewish or Christian views of Scripture. Now let's look at where this strict deductive logic fails. In the book of Job, for example, we read throughout Scripture that God blesses the righteous. However, Job suffers. Ergo, Job must be unrighteous. But the entire book exists to blow that logic up. Let's look at the incarnation. Jesus is fully God and fully man. God can't suffer, but Jesus suffered. Again, logic fails, but doctrine remains. Then there's an individual by the name of Corrie ten Boom. Now, she was caught lying in order to save the Jews. But lying is always wrong. By logic, she sinned. However, we call her righteous. Now, this doesn't just stop with ethics. We can see this in quantum physics as well. Light is a wave. Light is also a particle. That's a contradiction, yet it's experimentally true. And we can see these from the very words of Scripture itself. If you look at Proverbs 26 verses 4 and 5, two opposite instructions side by side, both true depending on the context. However, our form of logic doesn't allow for context. Its rules are to remain applicable, constant, and universal, regardless of situational context. So one can see how logic can and does break down and fall apart. But here's the thing, this is not the only way humans have reasoned. Chinese thought, for example, embraces complementarity rather than opposition. Truth is contextual, relational, and dynamic, not static or fixed. In rabbinic or Talmudic logic, it uses dialectic reasoning, not strict deductive reasoning. Contradictions are tools for learning, not failures. Multiple truths can coexist. And this is not relativism. What's true for you may not be true for me. Now, it's multivocal sacred reasoning. Rabbinic logic is built on argumentation, not resolution. You can also see this in Indian thought. The Nyaya school emphasizes debate but allows for probabilistic truths. And Jain philosophy teaches many-sidedness, that any one statement is only partially true depending on perspective. And lastly, we don't even have to go far to see variations of this type of logic. In Christian mysticism, we see that not all logic is binary. In apophatic theology, which is seen in Eastern Orthodoxy, it describes God in terms of negation as opposed to terms of affirmation. God is not this and God is not that. There's also mystics like Julian of Norwich who revealed that paradoxes and unknowabilities are okay. In fact, Origen and early Alexandrian thinkers were comfortable with speculative theology and multiple interpretations of the same passage. Unlike systematic theology, the Talmud preserves multiple opinions. Sages debate not to win, but to sharpen each other. Disagreement isn't weakness, it's holiness. This turns contradiction into a catalyst for growth. The process of study becomes a spiritual practice. Now, I was just reading this book by Dr. Lee Martin McDonald talking about authority before there was a Bible. And that authority came from Jesus himself, oral apostolic traditions, hymns, liturgies, and communal memory. Dr. McDonald says the early churches functioned without a Bible, through shared memory, tradition, and ongoing teaching. This resembles how Judaism lived with oral Torah for centuries. The authority was relational, not textual. But if we're the ones interpreting scripture, church fathers, liturgy, and tradition, doesn't that make us the final authority? Not quite. There's a difference between opinion and interpretation. See, an opinion is an unexamined preference, while an interpretation is informed discernment within a sacred tradition. You interpret, but you don't do it alone. You do it shaped by scripture, church tradition, community, and the Spirit of God. So yes, you do decide how to live and how to believe, but that doesn't make you the source of truth. You are a steward of what's been handed down, a participant in a body of holy conversations. Early Christianity and Judaism teach us that authority isn't top down, it's diagonal. Mystery isn't weakness, it's reverence. Contradiction isn't failure, it's formation. And evangelicals have much to gain here. We can read the church fathers like rabbinic Jews read the sages. Though it's complicated, it's wise, and it's worth wrestling with. Let sacred tension deepen your faith. And remember, sometimes the most faithful answer is the one the sages gave. Elio va'elio devrei Elohim chaim. These and those are the words of the living God.